edition of Wrestling with the Future. I'm your host, Dan the Man, joined today by Jason Tuttle, the Bearded Wonder. Jason, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Looking forward to this cast.
Wonderful. And joining me is the BS Express himself, Benny Scala. Benny, how are you doing today?
You know, I wish I could say I was doing good. I'm having some problems with the wife.
Some problems with the wife? What's going on?
Yeah, well, she's having some problems at work with her boss. And she came home and she said she needed to cover her ass. So I told her, you know, if she went down the block to the ball field, there was a big old tarp.
Oh.
So, I mean, the good thing is all the bruises are concealed and the bleeding is internal. So I'm good.
Well, at least we know who won that one.
Yes, sir.
And like I said, friends, we have a special guest today. Joining us is a true legend, Hall of Famer. If you were to have a Mount Rushmore of Memphis, he would be on it. If you were to have a Mount Rushmore of Southern Wrestling, he would be on it. A multiple-time champion in multiple territories across the world and the country. We are joined by the great, the legendary Bill Dundee. Bill, how are you doing?
Gentlemen, I'm doing real good. How about y'all doing?
Well, other than some of Benny's bruises, sounds like we're doing fine.
Yeah, I was just listening to that. I thought, I'm not touching that. That'll just go over my head.
Well, I know some of the some of the women you've worked with through the years could lay a whooping on you too. So you can never underestimate how tough a good fighter, a good girl could be.
Oh, right? I hear you there. But yeah. But, I mean, back in the good old days, they made the women wrestle, too. I don't know what they do today. I don't really know. They all look pretty enough working for Vince, but I just don't know how much of them can actually wrestle.
Amen.
Right. Well, Bill, we started, this is your second time on the program. We had you on previously, and we touched on your career in Memphis and your run through the AWA. You had a lot of good stories about Jerry Lawler. You gave us your side of the story of your infamous interaction with the Poffo brothers. The plan today was to look at your career after the AWA, so maybe from about 85 to 87 onward. However, I'm going to throw the first question to Benny because he mentioned some stuff we didn't cover in your Memphis days, and he's got a really good question for you. So, Benny, first question to you.
Okay, I'll try to fight through the pain here. So, Mr. Dundee, so back in the day, if I was a fan in Memphis, I could look forward to every Monday night going to the Mid-South Coliseum. Now, I live about 20 minutes from Tampa. I'm lucky if the WWE comes here once or twice a year. And so this is a two-part question. I guess the first question is, how did you guys keep the people coming in every single week and selling that place out? And then number two, I was watching some old Memphis wrestling, and I saw a team called the Freedom Fighters. They weren't there that long. I don't remember. Do you have any experience working with them?
Yeah, that was Sting and Ultimate Warrior, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
They were just green kids when they did that gimmick. They just come in here and they were big, and that was the name somebody put on them or gave them, Jerry Jarrett or Lawler or somebody, the Freedom Fighters, and they were greener than grass, but they learned.
Did you feel, I want to jump on that, did you feel that they were easy to work, easy to train? I know sometimes you see somebody who's green and you just know that guy's going to make it.
Yeah, I mean, they understood the difference between how big they were and how little we was, or they understood the difference on a big guy, little guy match, you know what I mean? They just didn't go out there and destroy you. They would sell and do everything they were supposed to do, but they were working with Lawler, they were working with me, so it wasn't like they were working with nobody.
That's fair. To Benny's second point, you guys, we talked about this on the last show too. The Memphis arena was sold out every week, every Monday.
Most of the time, yeah. Most Mondays, yeah.
And anybody that's ever watched the Memphis tapes, you see easily 2-3 people every show getting carted off by the police because somebody was jumping the barricade. I know watching the territory tapes when I was a kid, I saw women jump in the barricade. Heaven forbid you put your hand on Terry Taylor or you put your hand on one of the Rock and Roll Express, and women were going to jump in the ring for you.
Oh yeah, it was the boys did not understand today what being over means. Ricky and Robert were over like sons of gun. Terry Taylor was, Bill Dundee was, Lawler was. We'd switch back and forth, heel babyface, so that we wasn't all together babyface. But yeah, they liked us, and we was cute, so that was the other thing.
Well, to expand on Benny's point, you guys, I mean, every week you had huge crowds, and the modern product doesn't come through very often, and even only being here once or twice a year won't sell out. What did you guys do to keep the crowd so interested and so invested every week, to have that many people, the same people mostly, every week?
Well, here's the thing. The bicycle tape was 42 minutes. That was the one that went to Louisville, Evansville, Lexington, Tupelo, all the other towns. But we made it here in Memphis, and the Memphis TV was an hour and a half. So you had 90 minutes every Saturday morning to get them to come the next week, the next Monday. So we had an hour and a half to do whatever we wanted to do, and the rest of it was 42 minutes for the bicycle tape. So we had an hour and a half to get the people ready to go.
Nice. Okay. I want to look at the further career. I know you obviously, your Memphis matches and territory days were legendary, and you talked about your feuds with Lawler and your run in the AWA. You and Jerry Lawler were, I believe, 2-time AWA tag champions.
Yeah.
Following that run in '86, you went through. Obviously, you worked with Crockett. You had a run in the NWA, Central States, and FCW. During this time, you had a team with Gorgeous Jimmy Garvin. Now, I was hoping you could kind of shed some light on that, because that was really a contrast of styles and mannerisms. And from what I understand, your backstage personalities weren't really the same either. How did that team come about? You and Garvin.
Big Dust was the booker.
So
he said, Garvin, I'm going to team you up with Dundee. Dundee, I'm going to team you up with Garvin, and you better like it. So that was the name of that tune. So we did the best we could to like it.
That was entirely just Dusty Rhodes saying, I got two talents, and you guys are a team.
Right.
Now go.
Yeah, that was just what it was. There was no real, you know what I mean? There was no real tie-up with me and Garvin. It was just one of them things that Big Dust had it in his mind to do this and that. So he was the man, so we did it.
Now, to continue with that, how did you feel, like, as far as that team goes? How did you enjoy working with Garvin? I know that was kind of different from what you had been doing before. Yeah,
we had Garvin and Precious, because he had the manager of the girl.
Right.
His wife. So Precious and Garvin came as a team. So if and I had never really worked that type tag match with a lady valet, but we got it. We was healed, so we got it over, and it was. I mean, I enjoyed it. I can't say I didn't. They were nice people, and I got along good with them away from the business. So what can you say?
Now, I'm actually glad you mentioned that. Being you and Gorgeous Garvin were heels. How did that feel? I know last time you talked about it, it wasn't a big deal, heel or face. Transitioning from being one of the most beloved stars to now being a heel with a new partner and a female valet. How did that transition go about for you?
Well, that was the part that made it just the difference. It wasn't just little Billy Dundee trying to get heat by himself. We had Garvin and the valet, so I mean, it made it easier. Let's put it that way. Okay. Garvin was a heel most of the time. He had the valet and his wife, and we did, so it helped.
I can understand that. Jason, I see you kind of nodding and chomping at the bit a little bit. You got Bill Dundee on the line. You got a question for the legend?
Could you, first off, it's an honor to have you on the show and to be able to talk to you tonight. Could you kind of explain travel? How it was to travel back in the day?
Well, it was really easy in this there because it was all done by car. So we started off in Memphis and we ended up back in Memphis the next Monday. So it was 7 days a week in the car. But we all lived in Nashville, most of us, so you could get to go home to Nashville in between times. If you was going up to Louisville, Kentucky, you would go home to Nashville, sleep, get up, and go to Louisville. Evansville, Indiana on the Wednesday, Lexington, Kentucky on the Thursday. So Nashville was the base, and we all lived there. We would just drive out of there every day.
So, Bill, as compared to like a Mid-South, I'm assuming the commute was a little bit easier in the Memphis territory.
Oh, Mid-South. Oh, my God. You just lived in that friggin' car. That was a big territory, all the way from Louisiana to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and all in between, and all the places we worked. It was a big territory. But you made money, so it wasn't like we was doing it for free. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely.
Did you travel with any of the other wrestlers, or did you travel by yourself?
No, I mean, when me and Garvin was teamed up, you'd all go together like Garvin. And when I was teamed up with Tommy Rich in Memphis, me and him would ride up and down the road together. Just, if you had a partner or just if you liked the person. So that business is all, it's just like everything else. If you don't get along with your coworkers, it sucks. So I used to try to get along with everybody, and if we had to ride with them, that was okay too.
Right.
Bill, I'm glad Jason asked about travel, because something I was hoping we could touch on a little bit more is you in this day and age, the Memphis territory, and you mentioned Louisville and going all around. Those were some of the most dedicated fans. I know the stories I remember being told of the Midnight Express having to have police escorts because fans would slash their tires and whatnot. And how did you guys go about in the travels? Can you kind of shed some light, or maybe have a story or two about keeping kayfabe when you guys were traveling in that territory where you had such dedicated fans?
Everybody knows that word today, and it just fucking sucks. But it back then, nobody talked about it. The heels just never rode with the good guys, or vice versa. You never even went to one another's house. So I guess the word kayfabe was enforced. If anybody caught you doing something stupid, you was out of a job. But that's just how it was back then. It was real to us, and we were convincing the people it was real. So that was how we all looked at it.
Well, continuing with that, then, do you have any good travel stories that you'd be willing to share with us?
Well, I mean, as far as coming home was when after you do, you'd get your 6-pack of beer and you would drink and do something stupid maybe on the way home. But on the way to the town, it was just a matter of getting in your car and getting there and getting to the dressing room. And then I always worked in an office, so it was my job to set up the show or help set up the show or do whatever. So going to the town was a little different than coming home. So once you'd done the show and it was good and you made a few dollars, you'd get a 6-pack of beer or a 12-pack, and you would drink them on the way home. So there was more fun happened on the way home, guys throwing bottles at one another or trying to race one another or something stupid. But most of the time you did it 7 days a week, so it was a job to us, and it wasn't, you know what I mean? We just did it and went home, and that was the main thing. Get there, get your job done, and get home.
I like it. Benny, the next question's to you. Go for it.
Well, I want to, I guess, before I ask mine, were there any classic ribbers in the Memphis territory, or actually anywhere where you wrestled?
Yeah, there was a few, but I was always the booger and worked in an office. Nobody really ribbed me. I mean, that was the one good thing about that. But yeah, I'm sure there was a few. But like I said, we did it 7 days a week, every day. So by the time the first month's in, you're not really wanting to rib nobody. You just want to get to the town and get home.
Right. Okay. So my question. So today's actually my 65th birthday.
Oh.
Well, happy birthday.
Yeah,
thank you. Birthday, after this interview, I'm going back to the home for some shuffleboard and pudding. But what else?
I hear you knocking.
So, Bill, at a time in most people's lives where, like, literally, men that, in their 70s are playing shuffleboard, or they're, wandering around the mall looking for a frozen yogurt, you are still winning championship belts. You won I guess it's Game Changer Wrestling TV title last year at the age of 75. So
yeah,
I'm a huge sports enthusiast. Baseball's my passion, but most baseball players, by the time they're 35, 38, 40, they're gone, and like you won't see them in a uniform. You might see them in the front office or another type of sports executive job. But what is it about wrestling that once a wrestler has it in their blood, it never goes away?
I don't really know. It's like getting into it. You know how it's going to be when you get into it most of the time, or do the thing. See, I started off in judo, and I was an amateur wrestler, so I could do both. But and then professional wrestling, you know, I mean, okay, we're not going to kid one another here. We're not trying to kill one another. I'll grant you that. But it's an art form, and it's harder than it looks. You know what I mean? People say, "Oh, I can do that." Yeah, okay, try it. It's harder than it looks. If you see like me and Lawler work, it looks so easy because we're both good at what we do, and you think, "Oh, hell, I can do that." You know, yeah.
And you made
just give it a go, and we'll see how good you can do it.
How do you? Great question, Benny. Let me have you touch on that a little bit. How do you compare the talent you're working with today, guys in their 20s and 30s, to the way guys in their 20s and 30s were back when you were that age? How do you compare the difference in talent?
Well, it's all together different. It's like, how do you compare a movie to John Wayne? We all knew how he did. Well, I tell you, Pilgrim, and the way he drawled and he did the thing, and he was the man, John Wayne. I couldn't tell you one wrestler Vince McMahon has today to fly into the moon. I don't watch it. I don't know nobody. So it's not what I did, and I don't do it. So, you know what I mean? I don't really know how other guys feel, but to me, it was real to me, like I said, and I would like everybody else to think that. So we tried to make it that.
I like it. Jason, you want to expand on this at all?
That's actually one of the questions I was going to ask. I wish kayfabe was still alive and breathing. I miss those days. In your off time, what little bit you may have, since you said you were working 7 days a week, did you have any instances where somebody would come up to you, like if you were at the gas station or grocery store, and try to make a scene with you, or just come up and give you praise and ask for autographs?
No, that was what most of them did. There was very few come up and wanted to be mad at you. So most of the time they just wanted your autograph, or to tell them their mother was in love with you, or their grandma, or something like that. They say, "Oh, my mama thinks you're a great Bob," and off they would go. So most of the time, in fact, all the time, it was good rapport with the people.
Okay. So, Bill,
I had a few beefs in a bar, but we're all drinking and stupid. So, I mean, that wasn't just always the other guy's fault either. Bill was just as bad for that. So, you know what I mean? But most of the time on the street, if you're pumping gas and you come up, it's all nice. "Hey, Bill, how you doing? I hope you beat Lawler Monday. So I saw you last Saturday on TV, blah, blah, blah." So it's all good. It's a good rapport that way.
It's funny, Bill. In recent weeks, we've had Sam Houston and Magnum TA, excuse me, and Karen McDaniel, Wahoo's wife, and they all had stories about how great fans were, and then they all also had stories about somebody in the bar wanting to step up to the big wrestler, and obviously that, especially in the case of Wahoo, that didn't work out well for the drunks.
No, I mean, Wahoo, yeah, and it usually don't. If the guy has any balls at all, the wrestler will win. But most of the time, it has to be in a bar and everybody drinking. On a normal day, if you stop to get gas or you stop at a store, everybody's nice.
I like it. Benny, you had something to say. Go ahead.
Yeah, Bill. When you were working as a heel, and somebody would come up to you and say at the grocery store, did you have to stay in character as a heel, or how did that work?
Yeah, but I mean, you can be, what's the word I'm looking for? You can be mannerably as a heel too. You just say, "Hey man, I don't sign autographs." You don't have to cuss them or tell them. Just if they want your autograph, say, "Hey man, I don't sign autographs." So, and just wander off. You don't have to cuss them. "Oh, I'm not signing up." You don't have to go that far. Just tell them you don't do it. But then again, the other thing is, when I was a heel, if they took the time to come up and ask you for an autograph, I would sign it anyway. They took the time to come talk to you, so I mean, that's what they want. That's what I would give them.
I'm glad you said that, Bill, because I was going to ask you about that, especially in Memphis. I know you and Jerry Lawler were, like I said, the Mount Rushmore of Memphis. You both belong on it.
Right.
And there were runs where both of you ran as heels, but still got the best reactions in the crowd. In the era when you had to stay in character, did you have when you were supposedly the villain, did you have fans come up to you that didn't care you were the villain? They still just loved Bill Dundee. Like,
yeah, that Memphis was like that. If when you were over in Memphis, the people that loved you heel, baby face, or do whatever, they didn't care. They just, if they thought Bill Dundee was it, they would get an autograph from him. If they thought Lawler was it, they would get from him, or Jackie Fargo or whatever. So this town here is a unique town, but like I said, it was an hour and a half TV every Saturday, and every Monday was at Memphis, so people knew what was going on.
Did you, Angelo asked on the last show, did you, with the crowds being as big as they were all the time, did you guys start getting a special rapport? I know watching a lot of the old Memphis tapes, even as a kid, I recognized half a dozen 8, 9, 10 people that were in the same seats in the same crowd every week for months. Did the performers and wrestlers start
who was in the front? Yeah, you could tell who was in the front row. Yeah. Sometimes they wouldn't get until a little later. There would be the show would start, and there would be 4 seats empty, but you knew who was coming to get them.
Did you guys have a special rapport with those fans, or? Oh
yeah, they liked you and you liked them. I mean, this is what we did for a living, and it was getting people in them seats every week is what you did. So the good guy, that was the good guy's job, to be nice to the people.
Okay, I like it. Well, I want to look at another part of your career. The previous 2-part interview we did was with, I mentioned, Cowboy Sam Houston. And I know you guys had a pretty good run, a feud over the NWA Central States Championship. It was 1986 for those that don't remember. He defeated you in the finals of a tournament to win the title, and then you won it from him in 87. As a friend of the show, and he had a lot of good things to say about you. Do you have any good stories about our friend Cowboy?
Oh, yeah, he was a hell of a worker. He was Grizzly Smith's son. You know who Grizzly is? He worked for Bill Watts when I was the booker. Grizzly was my right-hand man. So, yeah, me and Sam got along real good way back then because I, like I said, knew his dad, and then, and I knew Sam. And Sam would say, well, you've been around Sam. He's not hard to like.
No, not
at
all.
He's a very impressionable guy, and he talks nice, and what was there not to like about him? And he could work.
Now, let me ask you, since we're on that topic, he had a very unique style for his time, a combination of the striking and the moving, and obviously, I mentioned it in the show. I still think Sam Houston has the prettiest bulldog I've ever seen. How did that work, going from some of the heavier hitters to someone like a Sam Houston who could do a little bit of both the technical fist to fist and move in the ring?
Well, I could do it too, so it was real easy for us. When you come unstuck with doing if you don't know the guy's style or you can't do the actual wrestling move, then one of us, one of you is lost. You know what I mean? If you're both trying to do them. So I could do them, he could do them, so everything worked. I mean, it was just how it was. I mean, and I'm not meaning this in bad, but if you watch Ric Flair's match, it's the same match every time.
Yeah.
Go back and watch him and watch what he does. He doesn't ad-lib nothing. He was good at what he did, but what he did was the same shit every night. When you watch Jerry Lawler and Bill Dundee match, you don't know what they're going to do.
That is very true. Now,
I'm not just knocking Flair. He was the world's champion, and he made a lot of money at this business. But I'm just saying that, just for instance.
No, you're absolutely right. Anybody, some of the biggest names in wrestling, if you really break down, they had the same 10 minutes of match 1,000 times in a row, but they did it so well that everybody, you just loved it.
Yeah, but it was the same thing every night.
Well, then in that case, obviously, how does that go about? We touched on the bookers and when you say with you and Lawler, where you guys are a different match every night, calling in the ring, what's the different mindset between going out there not knowing how your match is going to work versus maybe going out there understanding a bit of how the match is going to play out? What are the differences in that mindset getting into the ring?
Well, to me, it was just ad-libbing. I mean, once you get out there, how do you know what the people want? You know what I'm saying? There's 10,000 people in the building. Yeah, 8,000 was there last week, and there may be 2,000 new people. that Monday night, but you have to feel what they want when you get in the ring, and you can, once you've been around a while, you can kind of feel what the people are into and what they want and what they don't like. So I used to try to give it to them.
Okay, I can
and then
respect that.
When you're little, and just the big guy jumps on you and kicks your ass, they'll just get with you. Go, Bill, go, and then that's just what it is. So when you make the comeback, here you go. Bam, 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 and do whatever the finish is. So that's how it works, or how it worked back in the day. So.
Okay, I like it. Jason, you have another question for Bill?
Yeah, you mentioned Flair doing the same set of moves. Do you think that's, just using him as an example, do you think that's more of lack of skill on knowing other moves, or just, showing the fans the moves that they've seen on TV, or, you're always going to see him get hit and do the running around on the ring ropes, or, the figure four? Was he just trying to do signature moves for the fans so that, so they see those moves, or just lack of knowledge?
I don't think it was lack of knowledge, because he'd been around a while, and he ran over there in the Carolinas. I don't really know what he did, but it was all repetitive, and it was the same thing. He would do that thing where he fell on his face, he walked around. So I don't really know what was going through his head. I know what mine was. Like I said, back in the good old days, I wanted you to believe that I was the toughest son of a gun in the world, and this was real, and that's how we worked.
Exactly.
And,
I mean,
some of the shit that Rick did, it was just Three Stooges.
Right. I mean, everybody's seen like Hogan doing the posing and all, or the big leg drop. I would be more interested in a match from you and Jerry. I wouldn't know what to expect, and that right. I would think that would be the most realistic. That would be a fight, and not like a carnival.
Right. That was what we tried to make it. Blah blah blah. Yeah, and. Now everybody knows it to work and do whatever, because they have exposed this business. They have used it and abused it and done everything else to it. But back in the good old days, you just didn't do that. I started this business in 1962 in Australia. And Mark Loon and Skull Murphy and Brute Bernard, all the big star Americans back in that day, would come to Australia for Jim Barnett. And you'd watch them and do what they did. It was real to them and it was real to us. So that was how it was. But today it's just they want to see how high they can jump off the damn top rope, or what they can do, or how far they can fly. I don't know what goes through their mind today. I don't really know. But I know if they work with me, you'll grab a hold and get it again, son. You know what I mean? So
absolutely,
it's just a different kettle of fish today. It's like John Wayne movies. Nobody goes see John Wayne no more, but he was the man at one time in the Western movie business.
Yes, he was.
Absolutely. Bill, I that's a great segue, because you mentioned, and Jason had a great question with the style. You mentioned kind of calling it in the ring and going out there, and you played to the fans. Maybe if a spot wasn't going to work, or maybe you got a feel for the crowd, let's change something we were going to do. Do you feel that style, that calling it in the ring and moving, changing every match, do you feel that added to the realism, to the feel of the authenticity of the sport versus the stunt show that wrestling has become?
Yeah, right. I certainly do. And the other thing is, you can feel what they're buying. If the guy's putting a bear hug on you and you're fighting Nick Lennon and doing what you're doing and everything you can do, the people starting to get with it. You can feel them when they start to get with you, whether you go Bill, go, or whoever it is, go Jerry, go. You can feel the people and the electricity off the people, and they feel it. You're feeling it. So there's more. I don't know what they do today, but like I said, jumping off the ceiling onto the middle of the ring, don't get it for me.
I understand. Benny, next question is to you.
So your first episode, I was actually driving to work, and Angelo said something about it isn't fake when you fall out of the ring and you break your leg. And then Bill said it isn't fake when Bill Dundee punches you in the face. And right as I had a gulp of Dunkin' Donuts coffee in my mouth, right when he said that, and it took a lot to gulp it down and not have it come out my nose.
I hear you.
My question is, were there? I mean, I watched. You had a really, really good right hand, probably one of the best I've ever seen. Did you ever have a match with somebody, and when you got to the back, they were rubbing their jaw and saying, "Man, you were really laying that shit in there"?
Right, yeah. But, and then if they had any balls, if they'd been around a while, they would lay it back in too. And sometimes I used to hate their fucking chop. Ric Flair's was just, it's a slap to the chest. I hated that. It's not a chop. It's not a judo chop. It's not nothing to do with kung fu. It's just a slap to the chest, and it hurts. So that I never liked that, but that didn't even look good.
Now, since you've had the pleasure of knowing both of them, with the debate that's come up on this program before, and Karen McDaniel has long claimed it was her husband. In your opinion, since you are a true expert of the business, especially in that day, who had the better chop, Wahoo McDaniel or Ric Flair?
I was a lot younger when Wahoo was in Australia, and he would chop you there. That was his finish. The one that hurt me, I don't know. They're both. I hated that. I didn't care if the Lord himself did it. I hated it. It was just a slap to me, and I don't care if it was Wahoo or if it was Flair doing it. It was a slap to the chest, and I didn't like it. It stung. So either one of them could light you up. You know what I mean?
I understand. Well, then I want to touch on Benny's question then, since we always look at the backstage stories on this program. You had, and Benny nailed it, you had such a pretty right punch. Do you have any, you want to spill any dirt on who had the glass jaw that you worked with?
No, they would bitch when they got to the back, but they'd never really say much in the ring. Or they would hit your back. I mean, that was one thing, the good old days. If somebody sputted you in the ring and you thought, well, one's not too bad, but if you get another one, you're given the receipt right there. So, yeah, you just ended it before it got going. I've hit a guy a little hard, and he's hit me back, and I know why I did it, so you just go on.
I like it. Something that's come up, and your question reminded me. It's a video. It's been making the rounds recently, social media. Mark Calloway, for the fans better known as The Undertaker, was on a podcast telling a story of his first wrestling match, and he was with Bruiser Brody, and he was green, and he stepped out of bounds, and he told the story that Brody put him straight in the ring. Did you have any dealings with that, where you were dealing with somebody that was a little green and maybe too big for their britches, and you had to set them straight?
Oh yeah, I mean if you do that, but most of the people know who you are. I mean, if he was just starting, the Undertaker wasn't he a big old boy back then too? So who was he working with? Do you know?
He said his very very first match was with Bruiser Brody, and he.
Oh fuck me! Oh god!
Yeah, he tells the story
that'll answer your question, brother. Oh yeah, I got you. Yeah, Bruiser Brody. Mm-hmm.
I was
you
wondering.
Screw up with him, you're only going to do it once.
Go ahead, Bill. What were you saying?
You screw up with Bruiser, you're only going to do it once.
Definitely.
You know what I mean? And when we're all green, we've done silly things, or we've done green guy stuff. So, I mean, but when I started, we did a lot of wrestling in Australia. So by the time I got here in 1975, I'd worked with Jim Barnett's crew, Brooke Bernard, Skull Murphy, Mark Lewin, Speedo Soree, and all the guys back in 30 years ago. It was the Stars. So I kind of knew what we expect here. And me and Barnes got over real good in Memphis, and he went home and left me by myself. So Mrs. Jerry Jarrett's mama said, he needs to be the good guy. So they switched me babyface, and here we are 40 years later.
Well, then you did talk in the last show we had you on, your time in Australia. Let me ask, since you mentioned a lot of the traveling wrestlers, anybody that watches the international scene, England, Japan, France, Germany, they have a lot of their own style. You can watch a wrestler and know that he was trained in England, know that he was trained in Germany, know that he was trained in Japan. Did you find that Australia had its own wrestling style, or was that so much of American wrestlers traveling to Australia that what you saw when you came to the States was identical?
No, that part, yeah. But Australia had a guy by the name of Hal Morgan run all the wrestling in Australia with Australian boys. If you lived there before Barnett came here, we had wrestling in all the leagues, clubs, and the bars, and there was a lot of wrestling going on. And then Barnett showed up with championship wrestling. That's when Skull Murphy, Brute Bernard, Mark Lewin, Spiro Serene, all them guys showed up. So we did jobs for them. And we could all wrestle. Most of the guys were better wrestlers than Barnett's crew, because we had to learn to wrestle. And the wrestling in the bars was different than the wrestling in Barnett's clubs. So it was just altogether different. But they liked us because we put them over. Nobody said nothing, did whatever. So then when we came to Australia, me and Barnes in 1975, we had the Australian style plus the American style that we learned off Jim Barnett, Championship Wrestling. So we kind of could do both. If nobody wanted to do the job, well, that would be all right. Just go to the ring. But the people say all that, but nobody just does that. When you say, well, don't worry about it, son, just go to the ring. They won't go. If they think they're going to have to go shoot, they won't do it.
Okay. I like it.
So that was...
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So, I mean, I could wrestle a little bit better than most back in the good old days. So that was the thing. And then I just made me a little in the ring, but I wasn't scared of nobody.
Well, speaking of your time in Australia, Benny has a really good question for the origin of your character. Go ahead, Benny.
I wanted to know where the name Dundee came from.
Okay, I was born in a place called Kerrymuir, Scotland. I'm actually a Scotsman, and I came here as a Scotsman, and then we told everybody I was from Scotland. But Lance Russell kept, because I was living in Australia when I came here, so they knew I came from Australia to here, and Lance kept saying, no, Australians. But George was the only Australian. I was from Scotland, so I said, fuck it, I'm not fighting this. I'm just going to be from Australia. So I would just say, yeah, I'm from Australia, but I'm actually from Scotland.
So the name Dundee was an homage to your Scottish heritage.
Right. I was born in Kerrymuir, 12 miles from Dundee, the bigger town called Dundee, Scotland. So
gotcha.
My real name's Cruikshanks, and I changed it from that to Dundee, and here we are, 40 years later, Bill Superstar Dundee.
Makes it a little
and
easier.
The reason I changed it, because the other one was too long, too big.
Yeah, it's hard. Nice. The more consonants you have in the name, the harder it is to put on a poster.
Right.
Right.
Well, Jason, I see you kind of nodding and smiling along to the questions. Your next question is to you. What do you got?
I'd like to go back to something that Benny said and are talking about kayfabe. With kayfabe dead, what is your drive these days to still wrestle? Is it just the love of being out in the crowd, in the ring, being with the boys? What's your drive these days to it?
Well, it's just, I mean, that's what we do. And then when they call and say, hey, can you make Tupelo, Mississippi? I say, yeah, this will be what it costs you. If you want to pay me what I said, then I'll go. If they don't go. So I always did it for money, but today it's really for money, because if they're not paying what I want, I'm not going.
Gotcha.
And then when I get there, the other good thing is if it's a young green kid and they put you in the ring with him, he doesn't quite know what's going to happen. They just know Bill Dundee's been around for 40, 50 years, and we'll see. But I don't take no liberties or no bet with the kids. I just have a good match with them, do the best we can. So, I still enjoy the business.
Do the green wrestlers you mentioned, do they, pull you aside, ask you, for pointers or how they could improve upon their craft or their character?
Well, not so much now. 10 years ago, it was more that way with the younger guys than it is today. The last 10 years or so, it's just, you go to the show, they do their thing, I do mine, we all go home. So Yeah, and then most of the time they'll book me with Lawler or Dutch Mantel or somebody. They book 2 older guys, and that you don't have to fool with the younger guys.
Gotcha.
Well, then that's actually a great segue, Bill. One of the big complaints you said you're not up on the current product. One of the big complaints of the current product is there's a lot of talent, some mainstream talent that are self-taught. These are the so-called backyard wrestlers that never went to a wrestling academy, never went to a wrestling school. They watched enough TV, played some video games, and kind of, I don't want to say figured out how to wrestle because some of them can't, but they were self-taught. And you can tell that a lot of what they're doing is just a cheap imitation of what they saw someone do. I'm wondering, in your experience, where you mentioned how the young guys 10 years ago were more interested in learning than the current crop. Obviously, when you talk about legends like you and Jerry Lawler and whatnot, there's a lot of imitation. Have you encountered anybody that was blatantly trying to be the next Bill Dundee or a Bill Dundee ripoff?
Now that is very funny, because when I say this name, you're going to say, "Oh yeah, how about the Honky Tonk Man?"
That was actually my next question.
Yeah, how about the Honky Tonk Man? Memphis, Tennessee, Bill Dundee. Memphis, Tennessee, dyed black hair, Bill Dundee. Him dyed black hair. Jumpsuit, him jumpsuit. So, and I ripped Elvis off, you may say. I mean, I was the first one to show up with a jumpsuit, but I got the idea from Elvis and blue black hair. He had blue black hair. I did too. So it was, so the Honky Tonk would have been the closest to the kind of the rip off, but that was all for Vince. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, do you, when you saw the Honky Tonk Man trying to do your bit, how did you feel about that? Was that kind of they say imitation is the sincerest form of flattery? Did you appreciate
and I
that?
like Wayne. Yeah, but I like Wayne. I get along good with him then. I get along good with him now. So I mean, we're all trying to make a living. So, and he was with Vince. So, good luck to him.
Okay, Benny, you seem like you wanted to add something to that. Go ahead.
Well, I remember the first time I saw the Honky Tonk Man. I said, "Holy crap, that's Bill Dundee with it."
Right down to the dyed black hair,
the sideburns, everything. And
yeah.
Bill, did you ever have a chance to go to the WWE? Because I would have thought that would have been a great thing if you showed up one day on the set with your jumpsuit, your sideburns, confronting the Honky Tonk Man.
It's a long story, and I will try to make it as short as possible. We've already talked about the guy once. I went up to Vince's office up there in New York or wherever the hell he lives. Where does he live?
Stamford, Connecticut.
Stamford, Connecticut. Yeah, they flew me up to Stamford, and I was sitting in the chambers, as you would call it, and he's talking to me. "Oh, what? How are you?" Da. So then he asked the $1 million question. "Is there anybody in my organization you don't get along with?" I said, "Well, there's a guy in your organization that don't get along with me, and I really don't know why. But, yeah, well," then he knew the answer to the question before he even asked it. So he said, "Well, who is it?" "You know who it is. It's the friggin' Undertaker."
Really?
And I said, "For whatever reason he don't like me, I don't know and don't really give a damn, but that's who it is. So if I had a chance of going, and if I didn't, or do whatever, I mean, I had a chance anyway. But the Undertaker don't care for me, and I don't think he would have been a big fan of Bill Dundee coming to New York. So I have no earthly idea. That may just all be in my head, but I think that helped me not being there. So anyway."
Okay.
Just one of them things.
Well, then let me ask you. We had talked about some fantasy booking as we were organizing plans for a future show. When Jerry Lawler was in the WWF at the time, and his feud with Bret Hart and his King gimmick, and eventually transitioning to announcing, as popular as he was, his King gimmick under McMahon was very much a parody, almost a self-parody of the Memphis Lawler. And I'm curious, how would you have been okay being an almost semi-comical version of Bill Dundee versus being superstar and kicking ass?
Well, it just depends how far you would have went with it, because I can do the comedy better than most of them. I mean, I can do a comedy match. It's very funny. But, you know, and if I had to do that to make a living, if it was a good living, then I would have done it. But if I didn't, then I would have just been happy to be Bill Dundee, superstar. But I never got that far because the Undertaker do not care for me.
He had I mean, obviously his reputation precedes him, but he also had a lot of locker room power, so I could see why that wouldn't have worked out. Well, continuing, that's actually a decent transition. You may not have ended up in the WWF, but you did have a stint in WCW, and a lot of people miss the fact, or maybe I don't want to say forget, because I personally thought it was a memorable gimmick. Your Sir William character, when you managed a young upcoming Steven Regal,
right.
How did that come about? The transition to this, from superstar Elvis to a blue blood. How did that conversation go?
All right, this is the true story. Can I swear on this radio?
Absolutely.
Yes, this is an adult program.
Encouraged.
I have to cuss on this because y'all been around Dusty Rhodes much. You know, when Dusty talks with a lisp, he doesn't really have a lisp in real life. He puts that on. He says, "Hey, Pupatata, I love you, baby." That's how he talks in his Dusty Rhodes voice. So he calls me in the office one day, and he says, "Hey, Superstar," he says, "I got a new gimmick for you." I said, "You do?" He said, "Oh, yeah." He said, "I'm going to put you with Lord Steven Regal." I said, "You are?" He said, "Yeah." And he said, "You got any ideas how you'd like to do it?" I said, "Well, yeah. How about the valet with the bowler hat and the monocle and the striped pants and the shirt and all the other and the bow tie?" And he said, "That's a fucking good idea, brother. You just go ahead and you do that." Because the other choice was Larry Sabisco. He was either going to put me to manage Larry Sabisco or Steven Regal, and I thought me being a Scotsman and him being an Englishman would be a better fit than Sabisco from New York. So anyway, that was the thing. That's how I got to be Sir William.
That's funny, and I'm curious. Was there any kind of preparation for that? Did you research or study anybody, or did that just, because you mentioned your chops for comedy, which is true? Did that come naturally? How did that?
Yeah, I mean, and I knew what an English butler was. I mean, all them movies, the English movie you watched, and all the thing, and then all the So I mean, I kind of knew what the part was. So he wanted me to be the valet, like not an idiot, but you know, to be under Regal was the boss, and I knew it type thing. So yeah. It was an easy part to play because I understood the part.
Well, then let me ask you that. Obviously, his career has been phenomenal as the years went on. He's often regarded as one of the better talents of his generation. When you got the chance to work with Steven Regal, did you get that impression? Did you see this guy and go, you just knew he was going to be big or he was going to make it?
Oh yeah, I mean he was no idiot. I mean he could talk and he had the English accent and he could wrestle. He could beat most people in the wrestling business today. And back then, 10, 15 years ago, he really could. So I mean he could wrestle and he could shoot. So I mean he you know, and then the English accent and all the things he did, it was just, you know. And then I have me being the Lord's man, you know, him being Lord Steven Regal and me being the little valet. I helped think it. Helped him get over. So yeah, it all worked out.
Okay. Jason, you brought up the WCW age when we were prepping for the show. Do you have an expand on this or any questions you want to go?
Yeah, I do. I was curious, when you were brought in, why did you switch to a manager instead of a wrestler?
Well, that's kind of what they wanted. And Big Dusty was the one that brought me in, and he had that in his mind to put somebody with Regal. So then when I talked to Big Dust, I said, "Hey man, I'm a Scotsman and I understand the English lord and all the other things. So if you're looking for a manager, I'd like to have a shot at it." He said, "Okay, baby, I'll keep you in mind." and that's how it all started. So whatever it took to have a job, you know what I mean?
Right.
Gotcha.
How?
Did you? Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Jason.
I was just curious. Did you enjoy that more during that time, or did you wish you were in the ring in some of those fights?
Oh, I mean, you always kind of wish you'd be in the ring or you do whatever. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed being Sir William, and I enjoyed being around Regal and all that. Yeah, no. So I enjoyed it. Yeah. But would I rather wrestle? Yeah, but whatever it takes to get a paycheck. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir.
Right. Let me ask you. At the time, that was WCW's programming or what became WCW's programming and the WWF. The idea of a national wrestling show was still a relatively new concept. I mean, even though you would have viewers in the six figures watching your Memphis programs or your Louisville programs, the broadcast wasn't by any means a great distance. How did that work as being a performer, knowing that you were going out there every week on a national program versus I'm not going to be seen more than 50 miles from the studio?
I don't know how most guys are, but it never affected me one way or the other. If it was, this is the show we're making, and if it's going 50 miles around, that's good. If it's going 5,000 miles around, that's good too. So I never really looked at how far it was going. We was on it, and that was do the best we can.
Okay. Benny, then the next question will be to you.
So, Bill, I grew up in New York, Long Island, New York. Started watching wrestling in 1968. So I was all WWF and then WWF. And eventually with the advent of cable and then the internet, I got to watch some of the other territories, like the Mid-South, the Memphises, the Mid-Atlantic, etc. One of the things that really fascinated me that the territories had that really the WWF didn't have was gimmick matches, like hair versus hair, or loser leaves town, or the winner gets the loser's manager's services for so long.
Yeah, you give him 10 lashes or something. Oh yeah, the South was full of gimmick matches.
Did you like working those?
Yeah, I had a wife that had her hair shaved, and I had mine done twice. So yeah, I mean, but there was a dollar figure at the end of the haircut. You know what I mean?
So there was an extra payoff for losing your hair.
Oh yeah, it was what you agreed on before we did it.
Okay.
Well, then let me ask you something from there, Bill. You talked about a couple times tonight. You mentioned Dusty and the power, obviously, that the bookers had backstage. How did that go about? Would they come to you? Was this a natural progression? Was this the performers themselves? How much say did you have in, I see where this feud's going next week, a month from now, I'm willing to lose to get my head shaved. What was your participation in that? Or was it much like you said with Dusty, you're doing it, baby, and that was it?
Well, kind of, but there was a dollar figure on it, and that was the main thing. So if you said, hey man, I'll do it for $5,000. And he said, well, let me get back with you. Well, you knew when he said that he was getting back with you with something. So whether it be $3,500 or $4,000, but it'd be close to what you want.
Right.
So that was done for money.
Well, I always try and keep the human side, and we love the more the stories. And I actually laid out to the fellow panelists about not talking specifically with matches and history, but I can't help myself, since we were on the topic of gimmick matches, of those styles, what was your fondest memory of a very unique match?
Well, I mean, the scaffold match was unique, but because it was 20 feet above the damn ring, and it was just, you know what I mean? So that there, you take the bump off the scaffold match. So, I mean, that was unique in itself. Then the hair match, I mean, nobody knows who's going over until the last bell. So that, and then when you have your wife sitting there and her hair's on the line, it was all different. And she's looking at you thinking, you son of a bitch, you. But anyway.
Okay.
So you leave your house with your wife with a full head of hair, and she goes home and she's shaved bald. Your kids are looking at you like, what the hell happened?
Oh man,
the purse is full of green.
Well, now let me ask you something. As far as keeping character goes, how did that go about? If you get seen by a fan or a friend, oh my goodness, look at your hair. Yeah, I wouldn't have had to have shaved it if Bill had won his match last week. Like, do you keep that realism, or does that kind of fade with some of the gimmicks?
No, it's that way. And everybody was that way back then. So, I mean, yeah, she could let her head shave. She got paid X amount of dollars for it. So you still, well, Bill lost the damn wrestling match and I had to get my head shaved. So, I mean, but it was all over TV. So everybody knew that was happening. Beverly's hair was on the line and Jerry Lawler's hair was on the line. Dundee wins. Lawler gets his head shaved. Dundee loses. His wife gets her head shaved. So Dundee lost, and she got her head shaved. So, I mean, everybody knew the end of the story.
Right. Well,
so how long were you in the doghouse for after that?
Just about to ask.
Well, it was a real sizable check, so she was real happy.
Okay.
Buy a nice wig.
Money can do a lot of things to people, you know what I mean?
Right.
But she knew going in what it would be, so it wasn't like it was a surprise. So she got told what the X amount of dollars would be, sell out or not sell out. So that was that.
I like it. Bill, as we get close to wrapping up our time, I was hoping to borrow you a bit. Tonight we're going to debut a new segment called Cut a Promo. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to challenge, in this case, Jason as the newest panel member. I'm going to give him 2 or 3 minutes to just cut a promo on whatever in the business is irritating him right now. And since we have a legend on the end, I was hoping you could critique or let him know, as a man who's never been in the ring before, how his promo skills are. Would you be okay with playing along?
Yeah, I'd be good. Yeah.
All right, Jason, you have, I'll give you 2 or 3 minutes. Whatever is getting under your skin right now in wrestling, you get to cut a promo. Cut a promo, Jason.
Oh, man, put me on the spot.
Hey, that's
Jason, 3 minutes is a long time. Let me tell you, if they give you a 3-minute promo, that is a long friggin' promo. So if you run short halfway through, just quit.
If I told you in advance, you could have prepared for it. That's
exactly. Well, like I said, I'm upset about kayfabe being dead. I want it back. I want the realism back. Let's bring it back.
Right, on this promo, bring it back.
Wait, was that it?
That's it.
Yeah, I gave you 3 minutes.
I know.
30 seconds.
Jeez.
Right, I thought I was waiting on it to start.
You really caught me off guard.
I hear you.
Well, speaking of that, let's change that. Let's real quick. How did you do promos and be put on the spot like that? How did it come easy for you?
For me?
Yes, sir.
Well, I was usually the booker, so I knew everything that was going on before we got to TV, so I knew everybody's promo. So, I mean, for that part, it was easy for me. But when you're making it real, it's not hard to make a promo. You just say, Jason, I'm going to kick your backside next Friday when I see you, next Monday in Memphis, brother, and you better grab your best hold and hang on because I am giving you an ass kicking you will not forget.
Wow, that just made my night.
There you go. Man, no matter what else happens in life, the man could die happy telling people that the great Bill Dundee cut a promo on him.
I hear you. Thank y'all.
You know what? That's not quite how I expected this segment to go, but I'll take it. All right.
I hear you.
As we wrap up, Benny, you have a final question for Bill?
It's more of a comment than a question, but I wanted Bill's opinion on something. So, again, I grew up in New York. I had WWF Studio Wrestling with Vince McMahon. And I guess at one point, Antonio Rocca, then at some point, Bruno, and I guess later on was Pat Patterson. But then again, when I discovered the other territories, I had Mid-Atlantic with Bob Caudle, Mid-South with Boyd Pierce and JR, Championship Wrestling from Florida with Gordon Soley. And the one, because I've watched a lot of Memphis wrestling lately, I really, really think that Lance Russell and Dave Brown were very underrated amongst all the broadcasters. Yeah. I found out that Dave Brown was actually a weatherman. in real life?
Yeah, he worked for the Channel 5. He was the weatherman, yeah.
And I guess he just recently retired, but did you like working with those guys?
Yeah, Lance was very laid back, and Dave was very good at what he did. Yeah, I enjoyed working with him, yeah. And there were students of the game. I mean, it wasn't like they just wandered in. If they had a tape to look at before they went out on live Memphis TV, they watched the tape and then they went out and talked about what they were doing. If they had a match with Lawler and Gorgeous George and Son in the end, 2 or 3 guys hit the ring and beat up Lawler, they would watch it then. They would know what they were talking about when they got out there. So they were students of the game too.
Okay, I like it. You know, Bill, you have been a friend of the program, and you, like I mentioned, I can't express enough the legend. I hope you understand how beloved and appreciated your career has been. The fact that you still have millions of fans, and your segments in the program in the past have been very highly rated. It has always, as a wrestling fan, when I got into podcasting, it's moments like this that truly made it worth it. I appreciate all your time, and we hope to have you back. So thank you for everything. And do you have any parting words?
No, just thank you all for the kind words. And anytime you want me, you got my number, just call. And I enjoy doing them. So, I mean, it's just, you know, what can you say? I mean, I've had a hell of it. When the guy saw me back in 1962 and he said, a professional wrestler, said, Bill, you ain't big enough. Well, here we are 50 years later. Something worked.
Showed him. Well, thanks again, Bill. You take care, and we'll definitely be in touch to have you back.
All right, guys. Thank you all very much. Enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
All right. Bye-bye, mate.
Bye-bye.
Well, that was fun.
Oh, my God.
I told you that you want some inside scoop and some straight talk. He's the man.
Wow.
You know, it's funny. I'm gonna transition here. He mentioned at the end there the head shaving matches, and speaking of shaving, I want to do a quick shout out to Wrestling with the Future and our sponsors at Manscaped. And I can only imagine how much easier it would have been to shave everything if they had that back then. So for those, manscaped.com, you can use the promo code WrestlingFuture, and for 20% off your purchase at any of their package and combo deals. That's manscaped.com, Wrestling with the Future, for all your shaving needs, be it a good, bad, indifferent, or like he said, if you maybe not want to put your wife's hair on the line, but manscaped.com for all your shaving needs at Wrestling with the Future. So transition, guys, from that, Jason, man, come on. I gave you a promo.
Hey, like you said, green. I'm a green podcaster.
You use 6 seconds out of 180.
Right, yeah.
Right.
You know what? That's time efficient, though. I gave you the chance, and you used about 2% of the time I gave you.
You could have started with, let me tell you something, brother. I mean, you would have killed like 5 seconds there.
Right?
Exactly.
How are you going to, I was just about to ask that. How are you going to be on the show wearing a Hulkamania shirt and you not once drop a brother in your promo?
Right.
I should have had my Warrior shirt on. I could have done the whole, from the planes of the universe. Right?
Yeah, you could have cut a promo on some rocket fuel or something.
Yeah.
But that's great, and Bill, I love having him on the show because we always look at the human side, and most of us, obviously, of the three of us, I'm the youngest, but I still grew up in the territory days, and that's a style, just a feeling. I mean, I remember where I lived at the time in Maryland, you had Channel 10 was the NWA, which went as far north as Baltimore, and then Channel 13 was the WWF at the time because they went as far south as DC. So I got both. So, I mean, I could flip through and watch early Junkyard Dog, and I could watch Ricky Steamboat. And then on the other channel, you had your Roddy Pipers and Paul Orndorff. And then obviously some of the local stores had the territory tapes, and that's how I was able to keep up with things like Memphis and some of that. So to get that, to get the inside perspective, Bill's a huge fan, or a huge fan. I'm a huge fan of his, is what I meant. And he's a friend of the show, and he's got some stories. So what do you guys think? Jason, that's the first chance either of you have had to talk to him.
It was an honor, and again, I really appreciate the invite to be able to talk with him. Like I mentioned, I've seen some of his interviews on YouTube, and it was good. I like hearing about the territory days. Like I've said, I miss kayfabe, and just listen to the stories and listen how the fans were. You had the constant or the returning fans where they, if somebody wasn't there in one of the seats, you knew who was coming. Mm-hmm. I missed that, and I kind of saw that in our local India VFW with some of our people. You see the regulars, and you see how their relationships are. So it gave me a mind. It's like, man, I wish I was back in Memphis in those days, and being able to go to those shows and have that relationship.
Well, I think it's interesting too. And Benny, I know you can back me up on this. If you look at the tapes, half that crowd, maybe more, were older people. I mean, you had your famous, the grandmas in the front row trying to hit Jim Cornette with her umbrella, or the like I mentioned, the old man who would jump the barricade to help Terry Taylor if he was getting a beat down. You don't have that anymore with the current crowd. It's not even just the transition to the PG family-friendly product, but as the territory days died out and wrestling became more of what it is today, that older audience kind of lost interest, and there's nothing today that's going to bring them back. It's a shame, because I was listening recently to Jim Cornette had some numbers that he was throwing out, and he talked about the Raw had something like 2 million viewers, and at its peak it was 8 million, which if you look at the numbers, Raw was getting 8 million and WCW was getting 6 or 7 million. So you got 14, 15 million people on one night. But then back in the 70s and 80s of the territory days, Memphis, Louisville, Austin, Houston, Dallas, Florida, all these territories would get huge numbers every week. You had 30, 40 million people watching wrestling every week. And those are numbers you'll never see again. So Benny, as we touch on that, Bill being the great host for that, what are your thoughts on where wrestling can go? Obviously that era is gone. Where do you think it can go from here?
It's a shame, because just to be able to, like, as a fan growing up, like I say, it's 1983, I live in Memphis. I'm planning my schedule every week to be in that Mid-South Coliseum on Monday night. I'm not even sure what the ticket prices were, if they were expensive or, relatively bad, back in that day. But, like, I wanted to be there, because the big thing is I believed in those guys. The fact that those guys, and it was horrible, but some of those guys got their tires slashed. I mean, some even got shot at, stabbed. Mm-hmm. I remember when Larry Zbyszko talked about, after he turned on Bruno, that sometimes he had to be driven to an arena in the trunk of a car.
Yeah.
Just to not get, like, killed. I mean, but the fans nowadays, they don't have that emotional investment anymore. It's gone.
I saw an interview back with Stan Lane, and he was talking about the heat the Midnight Express got, that when they were the dastardly tag team, and he said they would get their tires slashed and they would have cars vandalized, and it got to the point where they had to get a police escort to the arena. And he said the first night they had the police escort, they came out at the end of the night, and the cruiser that drove them to the arena had slashed tires. Like, fans figured out which car was taking the Midnight Express home and went after a police car. And now don't get me wrong, I'm not advocating slashing tires, but at all, but that emotional investment, even really, I would say, going into the 90s, where my generation was starting to become teenagers, you still had your Yokozuna, Hulk Hogan and Yokozuna, and you had the trilogy between Flair and Steamboat and Flair and Vader. You still had that kind of, I hate to throw the overused quote out, but that's still real to me, damn it, feel. And at some point, that went away, and wrestling transitioned from trying to be a real sport to being a stunt show, even to the point where the announcers, I mean, I think that's something I give NWA. If you guys haven't watched NWA Power, I give them credit for, is it's very much produced like a television show, in that it's as if you're watching a sitcom about wrestling more than an actual wrestling show. But the announcers talk as if what you're watching is a real sport. They don't spend the entire match talking about some backstage segment or pitching Pepsi or something like that. I mean, I remember the good stretch where Michael Cole spent more time talking about Snickers than he did about the upcoming WrestleMania feuds. And just that little hint of realism, call it like it's real, tell it like it's real. That was something Jim Ross used to talk about when they would record after the fact. They would record the show without announcers at ringside. And then this was in obviously the early WCW Crockett days. And then they'd give the announcers the tapes, and the announcers would call it like it was a real sport. Like what they were watching was, I hate using the word real like that, but what they were watching was an actual competition. And that just little nuance is gone. And it's sad.
It is.
As we wrap up, gentlemen, I appreciate you guys being here. Jason, do you have any parting thoughts?
Like you said, it is sad that it's like that. I mean, it's more of a stunt show, going to see a stunt show these days. I'm actually kind of disappointed in AEW. When I heard them getting ready to start, they talked about not having crazy stories. It wasn't going to be scripted. Well, it's WWE light, in my opinion.
They pitched it as what they called sports like wrestling, even to the point where they were going to keep statistics and everything.
Yeah.
But,
so, like you, I missed that. It reminds me of when I used to watch Crockett with my grandfather. I mean, growing up, I loved, WWF, Hogan, Warrior, but, memories of going over my grandparents and watching Crockett and later WCW, it was real. He was a big Four Horsemen fan. It just, it does always bring back memories. And, I hope one day, they will change. And I'm sure, it's by the ratings. So, if the ratings start taking again, they'll find something that's going to change it.
Kind of what's old is new again sort of thing. I can understand
correct.
that.
Yeah.
It's funny because I look at the NWO as the last bastion of where a lot of people forget, and for our younger viewers, part of the appeal when the NWO started was there was an almost sense of how much of this is real and how much of this is them scripting, to the point where the old school message boards, oh man, Scott Hall's secretly working for Vince McMahon. Like you had that aura of realism. And I think that's part of what made that work. And that was the last, really, in my memory, I think that's the last time I ever watched wrestling with any semblance of realism in my mind.
Exactly. When the Attitude Era started is when we started getting into this, kayfabe dying, and and to the point now that they talk about matches even before they start, or the storylines before they start. It's like somebody going to see a big movie like Avengers or Star Wars and spoiling the movie for you. I don't care to see, Jericho talking about, how he's going to beat so-and-so, or how this match, we planned it for a month or so. It takes the mystique, the suspense out of it.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. And that's something that's been in some high profile angles recently. Benny, I think we touched on this in one of the previous shows you were on, where you have somebody like Edge's return in the WWE, which was a huge moment. And he comes out on Raw and talks about, we traveled all over and you and I rode together and we would sit in the back and plan the best matches we were going to have. And we knew and it's like, okay, so your entire gimmick now is you and Randy Orton are fighting for real, but not actually for real, because it's not it was it was silly. And I touched on it last time with the recent Becky Lynch when she announced her pregnancy, where she cut the promo of I got to play this character and it's my dream come true, and she completely destroyed the aura of the man that she had. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully one day things get better. But I mean, I'm stubborn, so I'll keep watching regardless. You know, not as much as I used to, but I still keep up. Benny, do you have any closing thoughts?
Well, I guess this is as profound as I'll ever get. But, you know, back in the day when I went to the Nassau Coliseum to see Bruno, I bought a ticket to see Bruno because I was emotionally invested in Bruno. I didn't care if he did a triple moonsault or, you know, nowadays some of the moves sound like something you order in a bar. You can't even pronounce the things, but because I love Bruno, that's why I went. That's why I bought my ticket. I don't even know why they buy tickets now. They buy tickets. Maybe they're emotionally invested in high spots, but they're not invested in the wrestlers.
No, you're right, and that's actually something that came up on a previous broadcast where you're more a fan of the product than you are of any individual character, and that lack of star power is what's hurting the ratings because you don't have anybody that you can hang your entire company on. Yes, you might have a champion, you might have somebody that maybe pops the ratings a little bit, but you don't have a Hulk Hogan, you don't have a Ric Flair, you don't have a Bruno who will sell out. Bruno, how many consecutive Madison Square Garden sellouts?
They had 188 in total, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking tens of thousands of tickets a month just to see Bruno. They don't care about the product or the match. They bought it to see Bruno. You know, when I was a kid and I turned on wrestling, I wanted to see Hogan and Steamboat and the Macho Man. I didn't care that it was the WWF or the NWA or the local promotions or Crockett. I wanted to see these individual wrestlers, and I went out of my way to see them. There's nobody today that fans go out of their way to flock to, and you can see that with these wrestlers that change promotions and the ratings don't change, so their fans didn't really follow them. I don't know. Well, like I said, we'll see. But hopefully, I mean, we always try and end on a high note, so hopefully things will get better, and we look forward to Bill coming back. So, Jason, thank you for being here. Benny, thank you for being here. I want to do a quick shout out, a plug for us, Wrestling with the Future. Obviously, we're on YouTube, Wrestling with the Future. We are on Facebook at Wrestling with the Future. We have a private Facebook group, Wrestling with the Future Podcast. Wrestling with the Future is on Twitter at Wrestling Future. That's no G, Wrestling Future. I personally am on Twitter, the man _WWTF. So for Jason, for Benny, the BS Express, which I love that nickname, by the way, the Bearded Wonder as well, Jason. I'm Dan the Man for Wrestling with the Future. Thank you so much, and we will see you next time.